Now, we've been really honored in Durham to have an organization called Spirit House, and you're going to learn about it. And to tell us about Spirit House is Tina Hall. She's a native of Washington, D.C., and a graduate of Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York. Her 25-year work history encompasses bank management, graphic design, a business owner, operator, university researcher, developer, community organizer, and outreach person. I love it what she has on her webpage, though. She says she's a cultural alchemist, and she's been with Spirit House since 2013. And welcome with me, Ms. Tina Hall.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Spend your Sunday afternoon with us. And thank you to Durham County Library. We are about to kick off our second citywide book study as a city. Our first book study was The New Jim Crow, and our second book study we are so excited about, Urban Alchemy, written by Dr. Fullilove. So I'd like to first tell you a little bit about Spirit House. We are a cultural arts organization and we utilize arts to lift up and amplify the voices of community members. And we have several programs in which we do that outreach. You might be familiar with some of our policy work through the FADE Coalition. We also do some restorative justice and mediation training of community members. And then we also have community outreach through book study and our documentary series. At times you may have seen our presentations at the Center for Documentary Studies. Bear with me, I'm going to read a bit about our wonderful author today. Mindy Thompson Fullilove is a research psychiatrist at New York State Psychiatric Institute and a professor of clinical psychiatry and public health at Columbia University. She was educated at Bryn Mawr College and Columbia University. She is a board-certified psychiatrist, having received her training at New York Hospital Westchester Division from 1978 to 1981 and Mount Fiore Hospital 1981 to 1982. She has conducted research on AIDS and other epidemics of poor communities with a special interest in the relationships between the collapse of community and the decline in health. For her research, she has published Root Shock, How Tearing Up City Neighborhoods Hurts America and What We Can Do About It, and The House of Joshua, Meditations on Family and Place. She is co-author of Ernest Thompson's Homeboy Came to Orange, A Story of People's Power, 1976, and Roderick Wallace's Collective Conscious and Its Discontents, 2008. She has received many awards, including inclusion in many Best Doctors and 2 honorary doctorates from Chatham College, 1999, and Bank Street College of Education, 2002. Her most recent book, Urban Alchemy, Restoring Joy in America's Sorted Out Cities, 2013. Without any further ado, Dr. Mindy Fullilove.
Just put these on the back table. Hi, everybody. There's some, if everybody who has an empty chair next to them could raise their hands, then the people in the back could get a seat. Oh, there's plenty of seats. Plenty of seats. Plenty of seats. Everybody good? Yes. There are some books that you just read. It's like a book, like Agatha Christie. You just read the book, and so this is not that kind of book. this is a book that I basically, out of 20 years of field work, found incredible people that I thought were working on what I think is the top problem facing America's cities, which is this, what Tom Hanchett, who wrote Sorting Out the New South City in Charlotte, said, segregation begets segregation. We're in a process of sorting out our cities by race and class, and it is endless. And because we scar the city and tear it apart and make it ugly, and then we just trounce people around and we tear up their neighborhoods, we create what I've called mad plagues. We create more illness than we can possibly control. But we also make ourselves crazy. And as a psychiatrist, it's this last problem. And I mean collectively crazy. I don't mean that some people get depressed. I mean that we cannot have, as a nation, a sensible conversation about big problems that are facing us. We're in the beginning of an epidemic of mass murder. We've been in the foothills of this epidemic for a while. It's really picking up steam. Are we having a sensible conversation about what to do about mass murder? No. We are in climate change. The climate has changed. We are going to be having serious disasters all across the country, like this serious drought in California, serious drought in Puerto Rico. Are we having a sensible conversation? In fact, is it even legal to have the conversation? So this is the serious problem. Now, how do you get from tearing up a so-called slum to the country can't talk to itself? That's the heart of this book. And then how do you get out of that trouble? So that's what I want to talk you through. And then the issue is that the reason you can't just read this book, because if I was trying to tell you, just read the book, I would say just, you could just read it and understand the problem. But no, you actually have to go out and see these things in the city so that you can figure out how to fix them. This is, so in these 20 years of wandering around and talking to people who were trying to fix this problem, to end this process of segregation begets segregation, to stop the sorting of the city, they showed me all kinds of things. And that's what's in the book, are their stories. These wonderful 10 people who spent a lot of time with me and taught me what they knew. And that's what I'm passing on to you. It turns out that, God working in mysterious ways is wonders to perform. It just so happened that Lisa Sorg had the idea that she should write about this. Amazing. Front page of the Indy. Does the American Tobacco Trail unite or divide us? That's my issue. So she puts into our hands a perfect case study, and guess what? At the same time, Kofi Boon and colleagues have written a book, Social Justice as it pertains to safety on the American Tobacco Trail. So we have here in Durham a way to read the book and read the city and understand these issues. It's amazing. It's amazing. So let me just talk a little bit about the book and about the ideas and where I think you can go in the next few weeks in these reading groups. So this is Urban Renewal in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the thing about Urban Renewal was that they got the idea that the way to solve the problem of the city in the 1950s was to clear hundreds of acres of land for higher uses. The higher use in this case was this civic arena and a highway. Highways were often higher uses. What was there before was the black neighborhood of the Hill District, the neighborhood that August Wilson wrote about in his Pulitzer Prize winning cycle of plays. So it was a great neighborhood there that's half destroyed by this for these higher uses. And parking lots, also very popular higher use. You could have a black neighborhood or you could have parking lots, I don't know. But I just want to say, as a psychiatrist looking at the city, what I want you to think about for a minute is teenagers who cut their wrists, who are in such agony, whatever, such distress, they slash their wrists, and we call that self-mutilation. This is self-mutilation. We had beautiful cities. We did this in 1,000 American cities. And we have done it again and again and again and again. And it's the heart of sorting, that you take something that's reasonably functional and you make it different and not necessarily more functional. So this is not sound policy on many levels, not just because it destroyed a functional neighborhood, but because it didn't put anything functional in its place. Because it undermined downtown Pittsburgh, it undermined the Hill District, it undermined the whole city, and it leaves the city fragmented and unable to work together. So this is unsound policy, but it's really insane policy, in my humble opinion. So this went on in many, many cities. My team did a study where we went to 5 American cities, including Roanoke, Virginia, and we asked people about their story. It happened that Mary Bishop, astounding reporter in Roanoke, did a study called, which she published in the Roanoke World News, looking at urban renewal in Roanoke, street by street, block by block. So all of these little things are houses. This is the whole black neighborhood in downtown Roanoke. They put in a civic center, a post office, and a highway, and some wider roads. That's all they put in. And then all this space is empty, where it was a very dense, very functional community. This is so destructive that downtown Roanoke still has not recovered. And the African American community has not recovered. It means the city has not recovered. In the way we think about race, if black people are having a problem, that's their problem. But that's a little bit like saying my hand has a sore on it, but that doesn't bother the rest of me. Or my foot has fallen off, but my legs don't care. It doesn't work that way. I mean, look around the room. We're all in this together. So it can't be that the black people get trashed and the white people are fine. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So the issue is, where did we land up? As Tom Hanchett said, we sorted the city by race and class. So this is Charlotte in 1975. Rich white people down here, poor black people over here, middle group in the middle. And we don't talk to each other anymore. And lots of highways to make it difficult to get from one neighborhood to another. I'm sure many of you have been to Charlotte and you know about all those highways. So downtown is just surrounded by a ring of highways. You can't just take a walk in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where we have gotten to, but we haven't stopped. So since then, we have carried out policies of planned shrinkage, Hope 6, gentrification, the foreclosure crisis, all of those policies. And we also carried out a policy of mass incarceration, which also displaced people and undermined communities. So all of these policies have been dividing Americans and uprooting their communities. It's not like when you divide people, you move the whole group. You just disperse people and destroy their networks. And what makes us able to function together as a civil society are our networks. So if we have destroyed that, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the basic social cohesion, which makes all of the other things possible. Which means we're just disconnected and unable to talk as we desperately need to talk. And one of the ways that we've thought about this is that chattel slavery was ended. We ended chattel slavery. You can't buy and sell people in the United States of America. But the pushback from the Southern oligarchy was Jim Crow. In 1905, Dr. W.B. Du Bois launches the modern civil rights movement. He says, "We will not accept one jot or tittle less than our full manhood rights." And we fight over that for a long time. Now, some people think, pose it, that Jim Crow was more or less dismantled by 1965. You could debate that or whatever, but let's say it was. But what has emerged, my research group has observed, is what we've come to call serial forced displacement, which is this clump of policies urban renewal, planned shrinkage, deindustrialization, mass incarceration, gentrification, the foreclosure crisis, that have disrupted neighborhoods. And this is still going on. So, in essence, it is a new cry. And why does Black Lives Matter have something to teach us about serial forced displacement? It's because serial forced displacement is really literally a murderous policy. If people in a society keep tearing apart social bonds and we can't talk to each other and we keep tearing up communities, we're going to kill ourselves. Society has to be able to solve problems because there's always something. If you can't solve problems, you're stuck. You're dead in the water. So this is not to say one way or the other that that's what the slogan should be about serial forced displacement, but I think it's trying to direct our attention to the fact that this is life-threatening. And we need to see these policies as a whole, as a unit, and we need to stop them. So what I learned from the 10 urbanists that I write about in Urban Alchemy is that we can pivot from this situation which causes mad plagues to a community urbanist agenda. That is your agenda for your city. And what I garnered from them were what I call the elements of urban restoration. There are 9 elements of urban restoration that I identified. There are many more, but there are 9 that I write about in Urban Alchemy in 3 groups: align, create, connect. I want to talk today about just one, the first one, which is keep the whole city in mind. My main mentor is Michel Cantal-Dupart, a renowned French urbanist. And I met him in 1993. I was at a conference in Paris called by the Ministry of Health, representatives from 3 cities, Paris, London, and New York. And we were discussing AIDS, substance abuse, and homelessness. Cantal went to the podium as an urbanist and said, if you want to solve the problems of neighborhoods, you have to pay attention to the whole city. This was a startling idea for me. I was working in Harlem and the South Bronx and other neighborhoods that were suffering from AIDS, violence, crack, all these kinds of addictions, and trauma and infectious disease. So I was very focused on the problems of the neighborhoods, but I hadn't really thought about that as a problem of the city. But that's really the cognitive shift that gets us towards sanity. And it's not really true that we are separate. We are connected. And so we have to be thinking about each other and connecting with each other. So the first element of urban restoration is to keep the city in mind. And I think that the most important document that's like secret and hidden is the redlining map. Redlining maps were made in 1937 by the federal government, the Homeowners Loan Corporation. And they had the explicit mandate to look at cities and to find out where there were new buildings and old buildings, and where there were undesirable racial elements, and where there were good white people. And the good white people and new buildings got green, and those places literally, in the instructions, had sound covenants, sound restrictions, so those undesirable people couldn't get in. The blue is also white people. Maybe the buildings weren't quite as new, and they didn't have as sound restrictions, so some of those people might sneak in. And you can imagine what was going on in the red. Black people, Jewish people, foreign-born people, and old buildings. What is striking about the redlining maps is what struck me, an amazing thing. What do you not see on a redlining map? Now, there's a million things you don't see, so this is a guess what I'm thinking question. But this is like a big, what don't you see on a redlining map? Mumble. Do you see a red line? Now think about that. Why is it called a redlining map? Because it's meant to draw your eye to this, to the red, and so you ignore the fact that we've stratified the whole city. Apartheid is, as Frantz Fanon pointed out, great psychiatrist, social psychiatrist, a Manichaean system. It divides the world in two. There's the oppressor and the oppressed. But we're all stuck in this system. We're all stuck. Now, if green is for new buildings, what is a prominent fact about new buildings that you know without my telling you anything more? No? This is a guess what I'm thinking question. You got it. Thank you. What happens to a new building? It gets old. And guess what happens when a new building gets old? It's not green anymore. It's not green anymore. So this is a model, as Al McShirley put it, of planned obsolescence. This is not a stable model of how to invest in a city. First of all, you're going to have a stable model, because I forgot to say, this is how you're supposed to invest. Put money here and not here. First of all, not much money is being authorized to go into the cities at all. Now, think of it. They surveyed 250 American cities. They linked it to the banking system. They didn't have to make a map to know if it was new or old buildings. Once they set up the paradigm, they could apply it everywhere. They said, don't invest in the American city. 1937. We basically said, send the money to the suburbs. This is a national policy. So we're not going to invest in the city. If you had a rational policy, you would say, these are the oldest neighborhoods, let's invest there. Let's strengthen the whole city. There are buildings in Amsterdam that are 500 years old. How did they do that? They what? They took care of them. They kept investing. They didn't say, oh, they're old. Did they say that in Rome? Let's tear down the Colosseum. It's old. This is not rational urban policy. This is, and let me just be technical as a psychiatrist, this is crazy. Well, when you go to the National Archives, and anybody who's a serious student of race in America has to go to the National Archives in College Park, and you have to pull out these files, and you have to look at these maps, and you have to look at the survey forms, and you have to read how they talked about people. You have to read how they talked about people. And another thing I want to tell you is these documents are still not freely available to the public. How much junk is on the internet? What Susie had for breakfast is on the internet. This formative document of how we think about race in America is not yet available on the internet. These 200 maps and their supporting documents, the nation could do that in a day. I wouldn't take a day. So that this is not available is scandalous. It is essential for us if we're going to fix our cities. But at least you can have this. You have this. And you can get the survey forms. I don't know, Kofi, if you have the survey forms. But so Kofi this is Kofi Boon, who is a professor at NC State, landscape architect, fabulous guy, and I'll be getting to his work in a sec. So he has the survey forms. He'll post them, or he'll tell you where they're posted. You got to look at these things so that you can make rational policy, so that we all can make rational policy. Because we're trying to keep the whole city in mind. This is what we've done to the whole city. Planned obsolescence, everybody on a merry-go-round. That's what we've done. We got to do something different. But we got to know what we're doing. We got to know this thing so we can say, well, how do we go in a slightly different direction? This is the question. So Lisa posted this quite remarkable story, or she opens her story with this quite remarkable story of her own experience on the trail. It's really beautiful. I just want to read this part to you. Hey, is that a boy or a girl? I kept walking and mumbled to myself, if you have to ask, you don't need to know. Goddamn bitch, why don't you answer? My name's not bitch. Why are you getting all white on me? The 30-something man swung his trick bike in front of me, blocking my path shortly before the quarter-mile mark on the American Tobacco Trail. It was July, around 5:30 in the afternoon, with 3 hours of good daylight ahead. We're right downtown. Anyone could see this. I'm 5'3", barely 110 pounds. Even though I walk with purpose, per the self-defense manuals that advise don't present like a victim, in my adult life I have been stalked, harassed, and chased. De-escalation, I have learned, is a better strategy than revenge. Just leave me alone, I replied, scowling. I haven't done anything to you. I didn't mean anything, he said, faking sincerity. Go on, go ahead of me. You're not following me. I dialed 911. He sped north on his bike. I went home another way and didn't return to the trail for a year. This is the state of America. Now, why is that the state of America? And I want to say that this is a story of incivility on many levels. So a young man is being aggressive towards a small woman. Why is a young black man, we assume he's black, being aggressive towards a small white woman? Because probably he has nobody else to be aggressive towards, and he has some aggression, right? Black community in Durham, as everywhere else, is in a very difficult situation with regards to drugs. And community disintegration leads to a shift in the language, the large behavioral language between people, so that being threatening becomes the modus vivendi. The young white woman does what she can do, which is to call 911, which is part of our criminalization, our thesis of criminalization, right? There's nothing else there that can help her. Why is she in a place where nothing else can help her? What have we created? And then that's the real question. And that's the question that Lisa tackles in this article about the trail. She goes back to the trail. She's really investigating it and really looking at, so what's going on the trail? And this is the question that Kofi has looked at in his report, very important report, Social Justice on the American Tobacco Trail. What I find so remarkable about this work, and I'm just so grateful to the two of them and everybody who's working on this for putting this before us, because this is what's going on all over the United States. Miles 0 to 1 of the trail, median household income, neighborhoods east of the trail, 18,000, west of the trail, 58,000. African American population, 34% east, 18% west. Part of it is that we've sorted out the city, and we go back to this is where the trail goes, this is redlined, and this is not. I was really fortunate that my friends, Olinda, Al, and my niece Janine, and Tia, were willing to walk the American Tobacco Trail with me today. It was really hot. It was really hot. We were really sweating. So there are no entrances or exits. The deep incivility of the trail is that it's disconnected from everything. But I can tell you for sure, if on one side it's poor and on the other side it's rich, the rich people don't want to be connected to the poor side of the trail. And that's the deep rudeness of the whole situation, which is being rude to the young man and rude to Lisa. And so the issue is, this is not just the American Tobacco Trail, it's just that you can see the whole thing. In a very short space of time, you can see the whole rudeness, the whole disconnection, the whole brokenness of our American cities. So I asked Kofi if he would draw me a map, which he very kindly did. So this is the American Tobacco Trail on top of the redlining map. This is like an amazing tool for understanding your city. It's an amazing tool. Because part of what urban alchemy is trying to do is teach you how to read your city. But here's a place where Lisa and Kofi and his historical maps have combined to give you the key. the key to the whole thing. So you can know what the problem is, and you can start to figure out what you want to do to make it better. My teacher, Michel Cantal-Dupart, has taken me to many cities in France. And one of them is a city called Perpignan. In Perpignan, there were 3 public housing projects, and this looks kind of like a uterus and 2 ovaries to me. I'm just putting that out there. Might look like that to you too, but maybe not. Anyway, 3 public housing projects, all of which were in strange relationships, dysfunctional relationships with the city. 2 were very isolated, and 1 was a city that was a housing project. Did we just have an explosion or? Thunder. Okay, good. All right, we'll just, everybody has their cell phone and their little flashlight on their cell phone? We could do that thing. It'll be like Pitch Perfect 2. You are my flashlight. The third was occupied by Roma, who became sedentarized, as they say. So Roma were traveling people for a long time, but became sedentarized in Perpignan hundreds of years ago. But they were living in a housing project which was ill-suited to how they liked to be organized for their lives. So it was like a bad fit. So it became this like hostile area, what just didn't fit. So the issue is, how do you take that? How do you get rid of isolation, and how do you create a place to live for people that fits their lifestyle so they can live with dignity? So each of the housing projects had a different set of issues, and he worked on all 3. Sorry. This is Clodion. And so the issue in Clodion, and you can see these better in the book, is that there was a road here. This is the housing project. The housing project, so this is 15 yards. This is a major road that goes to the center of the city, but you couldn't go that 15 yards to get to that road. If you wanted to get into the housing project, you had to go down here under a very narrow bridge, go all the way around. It was ridiculous, and that was the only way in and out. And there was a main road right there. So he said, no, we'll fix it. We'll open up the road so you can go there, and we'll make the whole area more amenable, more habitable. So what they did, so this is at the same time in America we're saying, oh, housing projects are terrible, let's bulldoze them all. But policy in France was, let's play with them, let's make them work better. So in this instance, they took a piece off so they could get to the road. So this is the same building, but they took that part off. But you see how it doesn't look like the same building? Because they put on balconies and they made a cuter roof. So in France, as in America, we like to say French words. So I like to say that Black Lives Matter is a cri de coeur because that sounds cool to me. So in France, they like to use American words. And so when you do this to a building, you have changed its look. Therefore, it is reloqué. So if you go to France and then somebody says, "Ah, cet immeuble est reloqué," you'll be saying, "Wait, I know that." So this can be done. Places can be made more beautiful. Places can be made hospitable. The whole book is about different tactics, 9 elements of urban restoration, and how 10 urbanists have used them in France, in the United States. And you know what? Kofi Boon isn't one of the people in my book, but he could have been. What is he putting before you is a way to rethink the American Tobacco Trail. You could read ahead, and that's okay, but what I really want you to do is go think for yourself. Do you like his ideas or not? I was very fortunate to have a number of students very fortunate means they were in my class, and this is what I told them to do, and they did it. But they could have revolted, right? And they helped me work on materials. So one thing that my students in public health made is this reading group companion, and a number of you have already picked up copies of it. Their idea was to kind of put down the questions that they had in reading the book, and to sort of encourage you to think, if you thought through those issues, you'd be sure to have tackled all the things that they thought were difficult and important to understanding the ideas of the book. This year I taught a course at Pratt Institute in the Planning and Sustainable Development program, and their assignment, because we knew that Spirit House was going to do this citywide read, was to say, I said to them, so what would help people in Durham connect the book to their city? What would they need? What would be the toolkit? So they put together a number of things that are going to be on the Spirit House website. So I just want to walk you through what they put together. This Draw Your Durham exercise. You know what? It's all going to be on the web. That's just the materials you need. It says materials. But it'll be on the website. In fact, it's already on the Facebook page. This is just not meant so that you can read it, just to sort of show you that it's there. So this is a handout is also in the back. And it's kind of this is the crib notes. So really, it has the elements, and it has sort of descriptions of the elements. It has a key story, it has a question, and it has a space for notes. It's like the key. I thought that was very clever. Two of my students decided that it would be great to give you and anyone advice about how to get to census data and print out census data for your city. So there's this, Tools to Unsort the City and How to Use Them, Part 1 and Part 2, which are guides to getting your hands on data. It's really fun and useful. And then a group of students put together these demographic maps. So there'll be a whole set of maps that look at neighborhood level, city level, and regional level, so that you can sort of explore what's going on at different levels of scale. And in light of this sort of great coincidence of Lisa's article and Kofi's report, I put together this activity, which is to visit the American Tobacco Trail and the surrounding neighborhoods, to tell stories, and to find the elephants. So elephants are a term Cantal uses for wonderful things. Every neighborhood has wonderful things. And in the sense of like connect the dots, elephants are like dots, and when you want to solve the problems of places, you connect the dots. And then read A Trail of Two Cities, does AT&T unite or divide us? And read Kofi's report. Since Kofi is here, I wondered if he would just come up and say a few words about this proposed process. As I mentioned, this is Professor Kofi Boon of NC State.
I'll be brief. I was just happy to see my friend in town again, so I didn't know all this was going to happen, but thank you. Through the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, a couple years ago, we got a grant to look at crime on the American Tobacco Trail, and I live in Durham. I live about 3 miles away, and use it with my kids all the time. What we discovered through our research was there's a difference between crime on the trail, perception of crime on the trail, and perception of the adjacent neighborhoods. They were all getting swirled around. Usually wouldn't be a big deal, but the perception of the trail was the big one, and that was getting national. So I have friends on both coasts all over the country who were in the greenways and in the trails, and all they really knew about Durham or the trail was this perception that it wasn't safe. So what we wanted to do was to try and get some evidence one way or the other, some data, because a lot of it was anecdotes, folk tales, people sharing their perceptions. And we did. We found out, really over 2 years of crime data. Actually, the Durham Police Department was very cooperative and worked with us a great deal. We had workshops in the community, particularly at the spots that were crime hot spots. We set up tents and sold hot dogs and things of that nature to get people to come out and talk with us. And at the end, we talked about some recommendations for dealing with it. Now, as a landscape architect, I'm focused mostly on the built environment, the physical things, but as you're learning from Mindy, and hopefully you learn from her excellent book, I told her, only get my mother a book, every couple of years, and I gave her that one, Urban Alchemy, because some things she's doing in Michigan. But this idea of, we all think of something like a park or open space or a trail as something that automatically brings us all together, but it turns out that's not necessarily true sometimes. But there are some things we can do about it to make it better. So encourage you to take a look at it. The data is presented. You can look at it, come to your own conclusions. Would love to talk to anybody about it. Thank you. All right. We have about 500 copies of it printed through NC Rail Trails, who runs and manages the trail. You can get a free paper copy through them, ncrailtrails.org. Send them an email. You can download it for free through a link in the Indie Week article. So Lisa's article has a link you can touch on, and it'll download the report for you automatically if you have a computer. Or you can contact us and we'll try and get you one. So thank you.
I wanted to close with just reading a little bit from Urban Alchemy, from the end of the introduction. The sort of, what is this about? Like, if this succeeds, what have we done? Cantal's book, Merci la Ville, opens with the sentence, J'ai vu un pré devenir Auchan. I'd translate this as, I saw a field become a big box store. It sums up for me the dreadful feeling of things done wrong. I got the idea that it would be lovely to know what the opposite was, how things might be done right, and how urban alchemy might be captured in a sentence. Cantal, in one of our conversations, reminded me of some arrows he'd drawn on a plan that had great resonance in Pittsburgh. Those arrows became gold, he said, the transmutation of the base element to the precious one. The arrows helped strengthen a collapsing neighborhood. J'ai vu une flèche animer une friche. I saw an arrow give life to a collapsing neighborhood. What have you seen? What will you see? What will you do? Thank you.
We are taping, so I'm going to ask you to let me come and give you the mic so we can get your question on the tape. And the tapes will be available. The tape will be available on the Durham Library YouTube page. We're going to link to Spirit House, and you can also see it on the People's Channel. So, okay.
Did your students get a chance to look at the impact of the building of 147 on Durham, the highway here? Because that was a significant city divider. So I don't know if they did or they didn't.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that, and we all agreed it was horrible. Take it out. Well, highways, it's a big, wide highway. It went right through a traditional black community, so it not only divides it in two, it tears out the middle. So it's just one of these self-mutilating things that cities do. I could say a lot more. I wrote a whole book on the problem of root shock. It's terrible. I did bring some copies of a little root shock comic book that some friends made, and it's on the back table.
Thank you for your work in bringing this to this community, because 147 is an example of what's happened all over the country at that time. But my concern about all of this is that as a citizen, this is all reactive. By the time we would find the right arrow to try to change it, the damage has been done, and we're asked to mitigate damage or fix things that are set in policy either years before we know about them and they're put in place, or we don't have the kind of resources to fight the development projects that that create these. So just some insights on how to affect policy at the political level, so we're not always trying to fix something that's been damaged.
Yeah, no, my thesis is fundamentally about getting ahead of the curve. And I think to get ahead of the curve, we have to understand that that this set of policies that tear apart neighborhoods, that build highways, that do urban renewal, that do plan shrinkage, that disinvest it, this serial forced displacement is an ongoing process sorting out the city by race and class. Tom Hatchett said segregation begets segregation. The real hope here, because we got out of, we ended slavery, we kind of ended Jim Crow, we have to end this. And we have to pivot. We have to pivot from tearing apart communities to having a community urbanist agenda, which is to build strong, stable, functional, interconnected communities that will be the foundation for health for our species and all other species. So this is about a pivot. I agree with you. If it were simply reactive, that would be bad. But Cantal's thesis and all of these urbanists is we can pivot. We see this problem, we educate ourselves. If we learn to read the city, we learn to read the plans for the city. But we also become a voice for another way of building. And that makes a change. It's desperately hard work because there's a lot of money at play here. But people are always like, no, the capitalists are only about greed. One time, I had to debate a guy who was basically like, it's only the market. And so I called up Reverend James Ford, pastor emeritus of Riverside Baptist Church, and I said, what do I say? I said, I don't know what to say, but somehow I think this is about Moses. Reverend Forbes can handle that kind of inquiry. So he said, why, yes. And he opened his Bible. I was a little surprised. I was like, okay. I thought he would just say something. Why, yes, chapter 5, verse 2. But no, he opened his Bible and we read through it. And we came to this remarkable sentence. And I personally wanted to skip that sentence because it didn't make any sense to me. But the sentence was that after like the first 3 plagues, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. I was like, ugh, that doesn't make any sense. Why would God do that? But, you know, God, a lot of times he does stuff that doesn't make any sense to me. So, but Reverend Forbes said, no, it's really important because he's not just going to yield. He's got to understand that this is about life or death. It's got to get all the way to the death of the firstborn. He'll get it, and then he will free the slaves, right? It would be nicer if they could learn from that previous example and say we don't have to push this to death of the firstborn. We could just stop this now. But the point is that Pharaoh got it. It's not just about money. It's not just about power. We have children. We have to keep our children alive. Our children will die. And you must never forget that although greed is powerful, our love of our children is deeper. And we all have children, rich and poor alike. Must always keep that in mind, and it's got to be in the forefront. Why are we building stable, beautiful urban habitat? Because we all have children. We don't want the death of the firstborn. And capitalists know that. And I know that, and you know that. Everybody here knows that.
Do you think the capitalists really will do anything to get things back to where they should be when they're making too much money? There are too many people, especially in my community, that are getting wealthy off misery that's in my community, whether it's tearing up communities, whether it's underemployment, unemployment, no grocery stores in the neighborhoods. So why would they want to make things right if it means they're going to be on the losing end?
It's what I just said, because we're creating death and disorder, and they will not be able to live. The Pharaoh's son died, right? The angel of death passed over all the houses, and the firstborn died. It's the death of everybody's, not the Jewish children, but the Egyptians lost their firstborn. That's what's going to happen. That is what's happening. I work in public health. You cannot tear up people's habitat and have a sane, healthy society. We do not have a sane, healthy society. We spend more on healthcare than any other developed nation, and we have worse health. We cannot have a sensible conversation about any of the key problems. We are not a sane, stable, healthy society. We are having an epidemic of mass murder. What healthy society has an epidemic of mass murder? This is scary stuff. And capitalists may be greedy, but they're human. And so we have to always keep in mind and pray for that moment when they get it.
I have the mic, so I'll
Oh,
ask
you
the
go
question.
for it.
You raised a fundamental organizing question that's plagued the movement for a very long time, which has to do with the difficulty of having insightful, deep conversation across a broad sector of people in any community or within the movement. And a lot of it, I think, part of looking at the challenge that the movement has to do with how siloed our work has been over so many years, people being expert in very specific things. And there were certain moments that happened where allowed some coming together. I'm thinking in this community around when the census issue came up. But when there's coming together, usually it's about mass mobilization. It isn't about deep conversation. And so I'm wondering what experiences you've seen from other communities where there's some form of that occurring, and how has that occurred?
It's actually worse than what you're saying. No, you weren't saying it's good. I'm saying, as a scientist, it's worse than what you're saying. Because not only is our society socially fractured, but the little pieces fight with each other. And so we're in a dire situation. When I say we can't talk to each other, we can't talk to each other. So how do we start to rebuild? And so you can only you have to start, sort of lower your buckets where you may. Visit the American Tobacco Trail, tell stories, find the elephants. These are powerful steps. If each of you has 3 friends, does each of you have 3 friends? Yes, good. Read the book with your 3 friends and get your friends and family to go for a walk on the American Tobacco Trail and think about these issues. And tell stories and find the elephants. These are simple tasks. We can all do these things. And then reconvene yourselves and share. Kofi will be there and he will listen to you. He will be glad to hear what you have to say. I'm speaking for Kofi, but he's nodding. He's excited. He is really excited. He can't wait. What happens at the end of that time? Not everybody in this room knows everybody in this room. But you take your 3 friends that you know, and you walk the trail, and then you have some ideas, and you come in, and Kofi has some kind of big room, and everybody puts up their ideas, and everybody listens to everybody's ideas, and you debate which are the best ideas, and then you go to city council with your ideas. In the meantime, you've all gotten to know each other. It has to be rebuilt. It's all about connecting. So, yeah, we're broken, but we love to listen to each other's stories. We actually love to walk around the city. There's nothing more interesting than walking around the city. We were out this morning, and there was a guy standing by the street, and he had no shirt on, and he was kind of large. It wasn't entirely attractive, and he was picking his belly button. I mean, you can only see that in a city. That's why you go walk around this city, because it's strange. There are all these people who were riding their bikes very fast in this 95-degree heat. It was kind of like, whoa, did you miss the weather report? Cities are interesting and they're amusing and fun. These things, finding an elephant, what you call an elephant, what I call an elephant, finding one and connecting up all the elephants, this actually makes you feel good. Now, one of the things that the 9th element of urban restoration is celebrate your accomplishments. And it turns out that you got to have a lot of parties. Because fighting the greedy people having, getting all this, getting people to talk to you. This is really hard work. But if you have a lot of parties, you're more focused on party planning than on how depressed you are. More or less, it works out. You can stay like one step ahead of the depression. So Tia and Kofi, Joanne, all these people are going to have a really big party in the near future to celebrate the accomplishment of this book reading and looking at the American Tobacco Trail, and that's how you do it. It's bit by bit. It's extremely slow because it's like taking a very fragile bone china cup that was dropped on the floor, and we have to piece it back together. We're piecing our society back together. We have to be very loving and very patient and have a lot of parties.
Me first, yeah. I biked the tobacco trail this morning with my husband to go to church.
Awesome.
Leisurely.
Good.
We use the trail regularly, and I'm wondering if your students, Tia, Kofi, looked at when the trail was rails, and what was the conversation around how the rails divided, or was there any, or those in the room that have some other history of Durham?
I didn't even know there was an American Tobacco Trail until yesterday. Or Friday was it? I emailed you, Kofi. I didn't even, Joanne emailed me Lisa's story, and I saw Kofi quoted. I immediately emailed Kofi, and he immediately emailed me back. So I didn't even know there was an American Tobacco Trail. But we don't have to know. We could just look at that. It was divided. That was the black community. This had some undesirable people. That's rich white people. So it was divided prior to the trail. It's been divided for a long time.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was any conversation about that when it was rails. It divided, the community was divided along that line. Anybody that has longer history than I do.
So there's already a story that you'd like to get. Yeah. And I'm sure there are people in this room that know that history. And so you'll learn that story. It's going to be great.
Hi, thank you so much for coming here, and thank you for doing the research and putting together the book. And in particular, thanks for coming to Durham, because I think Durham is a really cool city that's open-minded and that has a lot of intrinsic diversity and really thrives from that diversity. It's one of the sources of our strength. And I think it's one of the reasons people are relocating here. So I think that the kinds of people who aren't native Durhamites who are coming here are very open to preserving. I certainly hope many of the people who are coming here because they treasure Durham as it is. The question of capitalism is a serious one, and it's one that the world, civilization as human beings really depends on us figuring out how to address it. And my own sense is that the thing that we call capitalism today actually has been infected by a virus. It's not the capitalism that added value to the world, and it's not the capitalism that invested in education and music and art and technology that has made the world thrive. It's gotten a virus. And I think that like any other, and the virus is a cancerous kind. You know, some kinds of viruses cause cancer. and the whole world now is infected with this. Because just by recognizing that it's a cancer, we have a lot of healthy tissue. And the world is still in this window of opportunity where we can switch it all back. But what we need to do is what you're doing, is we need to take the positive view and do it with love. And people who are rich sometimes are completely empty and all they have is money, and it's horrible. Because if you have all the money in the world and all the power in the world and you're still empty, then where do you go? you know, because there's nowhere else to go. And that's what you found, what you said about the Moses story. That's what Pharaoh found out. He found out that all of his power and all of his money left him empty. And there are a lot of capitalists who have already figured that out, and all they want to do is do something worthwhile with their money. And so that's what we've got to do here, is help our city understand that the source of our strength is our diversity close by. Not that we're all the same, that we get strength from learning each other.
Your book is so popular that 10 copies in the library were engaged by 27 people waiting to get it, which goes past today, and Barnes & Noble said that they couldn't get it in by the time that you made the presentation. I am paring down my thoughts because I like the idea of the virus, because otherwise the reality makes no sense to me. But because I value history, I think reality has to include history so we can get to this love. And I'm remembering the origins of this country, and even geographically, and the implementation of Manifest Destiny. And I see gentrification today is a continued evolution of Manifest Destiny. And I think it has desensitized people. And the lady who referenced what's happening to my people, I think she's right on point. And the reality of that for me is what happened to the natives when this country was, quote unquote, discovered. So I think you're right about the complexity of it. Better to begin somewhere than nowhere. But if we acknowledge in my perception, if I may borrow in the presence of an august psychiatrist, that the mental health of this country is in the toilet. I am rereading Cobb's and Greer's Black Rage. I am reading now Ta-Nehisi Coates' current book that was released this past Tuesday, because at age 85 and having given the world beautiful people who have not been a drain on this society, I'm worried about the legacy that I will leave, and it won't be money. Even though I have a European education, I will not leave them money. Thank you.
So I have a couple of things that I want to share, and then I have a question. First, I want to share the fact that Spirit House has been working with the redlining maps all over Durham for over a year now. So there are some folks in the room here. Actually, Tim Stallman, who's sitting here, is the one who actually created really huge maps that we've been sharing all over Durham and talking about exactly what the redlining maps did. You know, the thing about the communities that were redlined was one of the things that had them redlined was the infestation of the Negro. So that was actually written by our federal government. So it's really, you know, it's really important that you understand exactly what happened here, because all of the country wasn't redlined, but Durham was. So we actually do have those maps and all of those statistics that are here. And also, this is our second book study, and so we actually have had an opportunity to work with a very diverse group of people here in Durham who read a book together, who convened in groups of 10 or 15 people, and everybody read Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow together, and then we came together and we had a lot of talk about it, and this is why we've moved on to this second book. So there are people here who are ready to do this. We're really, really excited about it. Dr. Fullilove said convene 3 friends, I say convene 10, but if you only have 3, that's fine. And and this new challenge that we have to walk the tobacco trail. Those of you who are coming to the facilitator training next week, please bring your sneakers, because we will be walking the trail next Saturday. For those of you who want to, I just made that decision, Tia, for those of you who are coming to the training. But my question is, I also know that you've done some work in Asheville, I think, or a couple of places here in North Carolina. And I'm just curious to know whether the work that you were able to do made, some good policy shifts for any places that you've looked at here in North Carolina.
I haven't done any work in North Carolina. I've been invited to be part of things that were going on.
Hi, my name's Katie Spencer, and I'm at the Museum of Durham History. Related to the question of history, and it's come up in quite a few different areas, I just wanted to share we're going to have the redlining maps at the Durham History Hub, 500 West Main Street. The redlining map of Durham will be up starting August 5th. So please come by. One of the questions we're looking at right now, and if anybody has any tips or direction, is how the national practice of redlining impacted Durham and the Durham banks locally, specifically how Mechanics and Farmers Bank responded to, was constrained by. So that's one of the things we're still looking at, but just wanted to let everyone know about that.
I just wanted to ask a question. One of the things that's always impressed me with your work is this overlap between psychiatry and public health and community health, and it makes you such a different kind of thinker, and I've always really appreciated that. So I'm really supportive of the concept that you were raising about deep conversation, but I also know that people don't come to conversations as blank slates without a lot of baggage that we all carry for lots and lots of reasons. So I'm curious about practices or efforts that you've witnessed where the kind of healing from the trauma that is a part of oppression and a part of the ways that we grow up, how that can be addressed so that really deep conversation can really happen.
One of the things that I think is that if you're carefully observing what's going on, which I like to think that I have been, the baseline has shifted constantly. I've been in the field for 30 years, and the baseline has shifted constantly. And one of the questions that raises for me is, does what people did before really work now? It's changing. And I just always have skepticism about whatever anybody did. And I think that, what's more important is that we are in the present moment creating dysfunction and alienation. What's really important is that we all understand that and stop it. We can't heal anything if we're in a downward spiral. So I personally think that becomes the crucial question. And then how do you stop it? Because it's a policy, it's a series of policies, and they morph constantly. If you stop, imagine that we stopped mass incarceration and took away all the stigma. We did that tomorrow. Would everything be hunky-dory in the United States? No, because why? They'd invent something new. So I think that, so that's one thing, that this constantly shifting downward spiral is stunning in its gravity. And we can't heal until we stabilize. How do we stabilize? We have to connect. It's all about connection. And anybody connecting with anybody. So people getting together to read books in book groups. Anybody getting together with anybody is good. So we can't heal yet. We really can't, because we're being ripped apart. But we can. We have to hold the fort. And to do that, we need to get to know people. And you don't have to make, not every connection has to be a deep, soulful bond. Coalition, which is the name of the game, just requires that you have something in common. Now, there are some people with whom you have a lot in common, but there's some people with whom you have one little tiny thing in common. So some Republicans have said they're against mass incarceration of some part of it, like like the excessive sentencing. That's all people have in common is let's don't do that. But there are other people who have something else in common. So it's just a constant search for what do I have in common with you. And as a personal style, can I identify with every person I meet as opposed to making comparisons and finding that they are inferior or different or not like me. So I think healing is a long way off. I don't think we're there yet.
I just had one question, and this is about the changing landscape. We're going through an IT revolution, and we're going to be having, driverless cars. We have Uber. We have social networking. How do you integrate that into a kind of an urban landscape, or can it, or is this good news or bad news?
There's a famous paper in Public Health by Bruce Link and Joe Phelan on social conditions as fundamental causes of disease. And what they point out is that we make modifications, like whatever. Like we tell people to stop smoking. And what we find is that it doesn't stop health disparities. In fact, health disparities can actually increase because the people with resources can do whatever it is that's the new recommendation, and the people without can't. So the odds are that if there are driverless cars, they're going to cost a lot of money, and the people with wealth can have driverless cars and the other people won't. So, and if driverless cars dominate the roads, you can imagine that people without money won't even be able to drive at all. So technological revolutions are not in and of themselves going to solve the problem of sorting out the city. They're going to intensify it.
I have a question that I'd like for you to please address. It is the use of the term planned, let's see, what did you call it?
Planned shrinkage?
Pardon me? It was
planned obsolescence?
No, it wasn't it. It wasn't
planned shrinkage?
Planned shrinkage, that's it. And I think I should understand what it is about, but it's just something about the term that seems to evade me. And I'm wondering, why did you select that term, what it actually means to you, and how it relates to the whole situation of urban alchemy?
I didn't select it. It was a policy developed in New York City. They said the city was losing population, and they ought to plan how the city would shrink, and that what they ought to do was have internal resettlement of the populations, and that the way to achieve that was to close fire stations in high problem neighborhoods, which meant Harlem, the South Bronx, Bed-Stuy, East New York. And what happened when they closed fire stations was that the fires escalated and the buildings burned down and the people had to move.
What was really I mean, obviously there must have been something really behind it. I just want somebody to come out and really state what was behind the purpose of it.
I do too. I want somebody to come out and state what was really behind it. But I want to say that planned shrinkage is back on the agenda in cities like Detroit and Youngstown. And I want to say also that planned shrinkage in New York City became a major engine of the AIDS epidemic worldwide. Because what we didn't know in the mid-1970s was that AIDS was already in the United States of America in those poor neighborhoods. And when they burned them down and dispersed the population, they dispersed the AIDS virus all over the city. So it's a horrific policy, and why would it's insane. Why would you do something like that? I think we're back to that Pharaoh problem.
Thank you. So I'm in K-12 education, and what you're talking about, planned shrinkage. So a lot of us think that in Chicago, for example, the closing of neighborhood schools is also a way to take resources out of a community and to force basically resettlement, moving of people. But I wondered if you could talk at all about K-12 policy and how it might too be part of the larger term that you use, the serial forced displacement. Or if you have references to other colleagues who might write in this area.
Well, there are two things. First of all, children are very affected by moves. And in poor neighborhoods, but poor neighborhoods that are burning down, families were fleeing the fires. Urban renewal, families were fleeing the bulldozer. So all of these policies destabilize families. And because we have constantly destroyed low-income housing without replacing it, we have created a famine of low-income housing. And because people don't have jobs that pay a living wage, the ability to stay ahead, so in New York, 50% of the people pay more than 30% of their income for rent, which is, so they're just, there's too much money going for rent because there's too little affordable housing. Scary. So all of that undermines the precondition of education, which is social stability. I didn't do it. So, but it's also true that the jobs that have replaced the old jobs, so we had manufacturing, we basically deindustrialized our nation, and the jobs, for example, in Durham that replaced manufacturing are these, what they call eds and meds. We also have finance, insurance, and real estate, all of which require a lot of education. So education is the gateway to employment, but the social conditions for education almost prevent kids from being educated. So I think we have put educators in a horrific bind, and yet we desperately need the skills they bring so that we can it's a, fight this fight with two hands tied behind your back. So it's not our K-12 policy. I think it's impossible to have effective education in unstable social conditions. Just as you're not going to have good vaccination results. You're not going to have good dentition. You're not going to have good mental health. We're creating disease. That's why we might be one of the richest nations in the world. We might spend the most on health care, but we're very poorly ranked on any health outcome. So, and education, it's the same thing. I'm getting scared about the lights. Are they really going to go off? Oh, okay.
This is going to be our last question, so we can have Tia come up and tell us about the book clubs. I know you all want to join.
Hi, you a couple of times you mentioned Tom Hanchett's phrase, segregation begets segregation. I had read a study not long ago that showed that the major cause of economic depression, urban depression in the United States was segregation, and that the 20 most segregated cities were the 20 most economically depressed cities. I'm wondering what it seems to me also, though, that if you're distributing real estate by buying and selling it, that you're going to sort people by class because of the real estate they can afford to occupy. So there's a certain amount of segregation by class that has to do with how we arrange the land and housing. But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about segregation by class and race, and how that might be addressed while still preserving neighborhoods?
A friend of mine, I've never been to Vienna, but a friend of mine got off a plane in Vienna, and she said to a friend of hers in Vienna, I want to see a poor neighborhood. And they're like, well, we don't have any. I'm like, you don't have any poor neighbors? And no, the government owns all the housing and everybody's mixed. So anything that happens with the thing about making housing a commodity is that is fundamentally, from my perspective as a psychiatrist, antithetical to health, especially in a what was the expression, this virus-ridden capitalism that we have. So it becomes part of the insanity. If we want to have a stable society that can solve problems and that can raise children and that can ensure education and that can go to Pluto, we have to have stable habitat. In this planned obsolescence of our habitat, we are killing ourselves. we spend the most on healthcare, but we have the worst health of developed nations. Now, I just want to say that the studies have shown that poor people, poor white men in England, have better health than rich white men in the United States. So this is not just about poor black people like me. This is about rich white people, rich white men. So the key is this is not working for us. And I don't know what we want to do about capitalism, but I know what we should do about habitat. And we should make it stable, we should make the whole society interconnected, and we should have great schools. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you one more time for Dr. Fullilove. And thank you, Durham County Library. So I know you guys are really excited to start a book club. And so I want to share with you some opportunities of how to do that. If you're able to access Facebook, we have the Durham Citywide Book Study. I post on there daily with different updates. We will have a facilitators training next Saturday that is 5 hours long. As Nia has now informed me, we will be walking the trail, so bring your walking shoes. Also, Spirit House website, spirithousenc.org. -nc.org will also have updates of how you can be engaged. We, just like the last book study, will be reading over the next 2 months, and we will convene, we will celebrate in October. So this is something that we are looking forward to. Again, we also have, this is a continued conversation, so I'm very excited to take part in this with all of you. Please tell your friends, your neighbors, different organizations that you are affiliated with so that we can all work towards mending those broken places. Thank you.